Have a podcast on your mind, but not sure if it's the right time to start? Not sure how to grow your podcast and make it work for your business?
We're chatting with podcast expert Sara Whittaker about tips for starting a podcast from scratch and getting the results you're hoping for.
Sara Whittaker is a teacher turned podcast strategist. She helps online educators leverage the power of podcasting to build brand awareness, scale their business, and connect with their audience.
Sara provides podcast production and management for her clients and is also the host of the podcast, Podcasting for Educators, where she shares tips on how to start and grow a podcast.
Being an online business owner is full of ups and downs. Some days you can't imagine going back to your 9-to-5, and other days you want to burn your whole business to the ground. We get it.
Welcome to Chaos to Conversions, a podcast of practical, no BS strategies to grow your online business. Each week, we're chatting about launching, copywriting, mindset, and more, so you can make sense of the chaos and do more of what works.
Join the conversation and let's grow together.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Chaos to Conversions. We are here with Branda and I's friend, Sara, and I am so excited to have you here with us on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I've been patiently waiting for my invite, so I was so happy to see that email come through.
I know, we took kind of a hot minute. It's just guest episodes as well, you're the perfect person to give advice on it, but guest episodes, as you know, can be a little bit cumbersome sometimes, but
Yep. Well, especially when there's two of you plus your guest. So it's a lot of scheduling.
yeah, lot going on.
Yeah.
Lot going on.
For
So,
that.
okay. So let's just pop right on into it. The online space is changing, I feel like. Correct. So why do you think now is, or I guess I should say, do you think now is a good time to start a podcast? Yay or nay?
I'm sure you can guess my answer. So yeah, I mean, we are in a very weird time right now. I think a lot of us are wishing that we were still like in 2020 where things just came a little bit easier in the online space. The sales were flowing, and I know that a lot of people are struggling right now. Things are just different. We're having to work a little bit harder. We're having to try some new things. Things that used to work just aren't quite doing the trick anymore. And I think also we're just so surrounded by AI now that there definitely is a little bit of that like connection piece that has been lost. A little bit of trust has been lost. I think people are slower to trust people in the online space now. You know, you go on Instagram and every single post is automated responses from ManyChat, and like there's that personal piece is just kind of missing. And so I think that right now that's why podcasting is such a great platform to be on, because it does build that trust in a very different way than, you know, social media and some of these other platforms that we're on and that we're doing our marketing on. You know, there's studies, I can even send you some for people who like looking at data, but there are actual studies that show that listening to somebody's voice on a podcast actually increases those feelings of being socially connected to somebody. So if you are a business owner who's either like just looking to expand your audience, or you're just kind of looking for something new to try, a new way to connect with your audience, then podcasting might be a really great platform for you if it's something that excites you. If the idea of podcasting is something that sounds appealing to you, I do think that it's going to be in your favor if you are at least a little bit of an established business versus somebody who's just starting out. I don't necessarily think that podcasting would be the best choice for somebody who's just getting started with business. If you are an established business who has a clear audience, who has things that you're selling, you have lead magnets, you have maybe existing pieces of content already. I know a lot of the online business owners who have been in the space for, 4 or 5 years or more. Maybe you started with a blog and you have all of these blog posts. I know a lot of my clients have started there with blog posts and then like turn them into podcast episodes. So that's a really cool way to get started too. But yeah, in short, I think that most businesses honestly probably would benefit from a podcast at this time that we're in.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a good point because you cannot really, I mean, you can use AI to outline your podcast and like sure, I mean, Brandon and I do that too sometimes like
Yeah.
to get started, but you I mean, I guess you could use AI to script the whole thing too, but like I don't know, that sounds way harder than just like coming on and just talking
Yeah.
about it at all. So what would you say you need to get started? Like do you have your blogs? Let's just say you're starting there. That's like kind of where I feel like Brandon and I started because turns out I hate blogging.
Yeah.
And what else besides like blogs and a dream maybe do you need to get like actually started with a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, from like the physical, like actual things that you need, and this is something I think that holds a lot of people back. A lot of people think that like starting a podcast requires all this really high tech, and that's not the case. Honestly, the the equipment that you need and like the tech piece is truly like the easiest part of podcasting, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys feel that way, considering that you were just talking about having some
No,
issues
I
with
don't feel that
recording.
way, but that's okay.
But like, I mean, really, equipment wise, all you need is a computer and a microphone and a pair of headphones. I recommend using headphones. That honestly isn't a necessity either, but that's kind of the equipment that you need. You can get everything. You can get your mic and your headphones on Amazon, super easy. But then I think that the bigger pieces here are like you need a clear audience. You need your cover art that you can go and create on Canva. You need to have a like a vision for your show. How do you want to structure your show? Is it going to be a co-hosted show like you guys have? Is it going to be just you behind the mic for every episode? Is it going to be a combination of guests and solo episodes? So like kind of that structural piece of things. Are you going to do short episodes, longer episodes? Predictability is really great for podcast listeners. Your episodes don't have to be the same length every time, but like having some sort of predictable structure that people can come to expect when they listen week after week is always good. So, like, those are some of the details. A big thing that people miss is having some sort of systems set up. So, this is something I recommend really getting in place before you launch your show. And what I mean by that is like some sort of project management tool. I use ClickUp. What do you guys use?
We use Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
Because Brandy uses Monday and it's in hers. Like I personally use Asana. So, different
Yeah.
strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I mean there's so many out there, but having a project management tool set up that you can have your checklist that you're going to do for every episode. So you can set due dates for yourself of when you are going to record, when you're going to edit and schedule your episodes, like what are going to be your responsibilities? If you're going to hire anything out, what are going to be the responsibilities of the other people? But having those systems in place ahead of time before you get started, like a lot of people are just like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to jump in. And they don't have any of these things set up. And that's when that pod fade happens. And after a few episodes, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with this. And it's because they don't have any kind of routines in place. So yeah, those are kind of like the first steps.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the systems part, especially even like the guesting part of it. That's
Yes.
something that like when we had a podcast editor, she was taking care of the guesting. And then when we switched to doing it ourselves, we were like, oh, we like have to now figure out a system for this. And that's like the kind of the beauty of co-hosting is that you don't have to do so much lift in it, right? Because I'm like, okay, great. I get like a break if I don't have to record all the episodes. But you do
Yes.
have to have really, really good systems to be able to communicate back and forth on like what's been done, what needs to be completed, where are we at. So I agree. I've heard before that like a lot of podcasts, and you kind of touched on this, that podcast fatigue and dropout, but a lot of them fail within the first, I think it was like 3 episodes that I read.
Yeah.
How can you like prevent that from happening? Well, first of all, maybe like what do you think is causing people to fail out in the 3 episodes? Is it maybe the systems?
Yeah.
And then how can they push through and continue on beyond that?
This is a big thing that I talk about because you're 100% correct. I think it's like 3 to 5 episodes. A huge majority of podcasts fall off, which is so sad to like get started and put all that work in and then never see past 5 episodes. But systems definitely play a role in that, like we were just talking about. One thing that's going to really set you up for success is I like to tell people to try and record multiple episodes before you ever launch your podcast. Like 10 or more episodes is a really great goal to have. And just you're going to have them recorded, you're going to have them in your queue before you ever even schedule your first episode. That is going to set you up for so much success and make things easier, like long term, ongoing. If you can always have that queue of episodes ready to go, you're not going to be on that hamster wheel week after week of, oh, my kid got sick, or I got sick, or we're going on vacation and I have no time to record. And that's the trap that so many people get into is, again, part of that is systems, like not having those certain days that you're going to record. But then when that does happen, if you have those episodes to fall back on, it's going to make your life so much easier. And if you can do that before you even start, then keep it up, whether you're going to record one episode every single week or other people like to do a batch session. Regardless of how you do it, there's so many ways that you can set that up, but always have those extra episodes. The other big thing that I see a lot is people say, okay, I'm going to start my podcast, and then they do it, oftentimes with just one episode, and then they share it to their audience. They send out the email, they post it on Instagram. I started a podcast, go listen. And there was no build up to it. And so nobody was anticipating this happening. And I know you guys talk about, this idea of like having a launch runway before you launch your program, before you launch your membership or your new digital product. You want to do the same thing when you launch a podcast. You want to have that build up. You want to get your audience, your existing audience, involved as much as possible. Have people vote on your cover art. Send out emails asking for what do people want to hear about? What questions do you have? And use that for your content planning too. But really, I like to have at least 6 weeks of a build up until the actual podcast launch. And even before your first episode goes live, you can put out a trailer a couple weeks before your first episode so that it really builds up that excitement and that anticipation so that when you finally do launch, people are expecting it and they're ready to listen. Because when you don't do that, people get disappointed when they, announce this podcast to their audience and then they're checking their downloads after day one and their downloads look low and they're wondering why. And it's because they didn't have that runway.
Yeah. That pesky launch runway, right? It's getting you from all angles. Course, membership, group program, now it's a podcast launch.
I know.
Well, see, launching's fun though. I mean,
but you know what? That's honestly like my favorite part of the podcast launch is that build up because it gets you excited as the host too. Like it keeps that momentum going for you. And it just makes it that much more exciting.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun when we did it together, which, oh my gosh, can you believe we started that like almost 2 years ago?
No, I think
we started September, October or something. Like
it's crazy. Yeah. It would have been like 2 years ago.
Okay.
That is crazy.
Yeah. How about that? And yeah, you made us do all the things. It's just
sure did.
People feel like when they work with me, like, no, you have to post and get people to vote on things.
I know.
But it was
so annoying.
It was fun. It was fun though. But I mean, we also, I feel like that kind of thing. So it just shows, like you were saying earlier, that consistency and anticipation and pre-launch sort of things are important in every aspect of online business.
Yes.
That's the moral of the show, I guess, but I'm just kidding. So when you move into actually having your podcast, and let's say you've got it rolling, you have some episodes batched out, what would be like some of your tips for actually structuring? You talked about predictability a little bit, but like tips for like structuring your podcast so it's supportive of your business, but also like really useful for your audience. What's like your favorite like episode type of structure?
The actual like structure of your episode?
Yeah. What do you like? What do you like? What I mean, because I feel like you have opinions based on like what different podcasts are, but like I kind of want to know what like Sarah's favorite episode structure
Yeah, well,
is.
that's a tricky question to have like one
Mhm.
specific structure because, well, and I will say like for purposes of this conversation, like I'm kind of talking to you guys as online business owners. You know, of course, you have like if you want to go start a hobby podcast, great, go start a hobby podcast, and maybe your goal there is more of like if you wanted to make money on your podcast, maybe you're more of like a sponsor driven
Mhm.
show. But for people who are online business owners starting a podcast for their business, typically you are the ROI that you're going to see and like in terms of monetizing your podcast, typically it's like you know you want to be marketing your services, you want to be marketing your digital products, your courses, your membership, whatever that may be. So in terms of kind of meeting that goal of both creating episodes that are going to support your business, but also benefiting your audience. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can set it up. I know I'm a former teacher. I think a lot of your audience are
Mhm.
also either current or former teachers, and we like to teach. So, you know, my business is called Podcasting for Educators. So I am a big fan of educating on your podcast. I think something that a lot of people struggle with when they create episodes where they are teaching, but they are also selling is like how much, you know, I don't want to give away too much in my episodes. I am of the mindset of, and what I have personally seen the most success with my podcast and making sales from my podcast listeners is being as helpful as you possibly can in your episodes. Nobody likes to listen to a podcast that they think is going to educate them about something and then walking away and being like, the title of that episode didn't really match what they actually talked about. Or like, I feel like I just listened to a bunch of fluff. So
Mhm.
that's like a thing that I very strongly believe in is to not be afraid to actually like give some good information on your podcast if you are an educational kind of podcast. But then with that, there's you can make that like a win-win for you and your listeners. So you're giving information to your listeners, you're teaching your listeners about something, but you can also do things like you can run what's called dynamic ads inside of your episode where you can have think of it as like you're the sponsor of your own podcast. So you're going to record an ad, a 30-second ad that talks about a lead magnet that you have, or it talks about that doors are open to your membership, or it talks about your one-on-one services that you offer. And this is a really cool way to make sure that you're actually talking about what you're selling, which is something a lot of people forget to do
Uh-huh.
in their episodes, um, in a way that like feels comfortable and doesn't feel salesy because you can literally like record an ad and then inside of your podcast host, which is kind of like the home base for your podcast, you can literally, with the click of a button, add that ad across all of your episodes. So that's just kind of like a hands off, easy way to pop those reminders into your episodes with your listeners. Um, you also, a couple of other like types of episodes that I really love and that I encourage people to do are like case study episodes. If you're a service provider, like we all are, you can either have a client on or you can share a case study about one of your clients and how they got these results. And that's a really great way to, again, share about your services and the results that you can help people get without feeling like super salesy. Kind of along the same lines, I love doing what's called like, I call them like testimonial episodes where you might have, let's say you have a membership on behavior management and you have a member in there who's like always sharing their wins in your Facebook group. So you can invite them onto your podcast and think of it as more cuz when I tell clients to do this, they're like, "But how do I do this? How do I structure it?" And I'm like, "Think about it more of like you're telling a story and your guest is telling a story. Pick one thing that you can really focus on. Is there one thing that your guests can like a story that they can tell about a student in their class and like how something that they learned or a resource that they had from your membership really made a big difference in their classroom, and you're just coming on and you're telling that story, and that makes people uncomfortable sometimes because they're like, well, I don't want to like just invite somebody on my podcast and just have them feel like they have to talk about my membership. And it's not that. Think of it as that storytelling. I always share that when I first started in this freelance space, I had heard about a program that I could go through to learn about freelancing, and she had a podcast. And so before I bought the program, I listened to the podcast because almost every single week she had what she called like success stories, where she would have on people who had been through her program, and they just shared about themselves. They shared about how they used to be a teacher and then they became a freelancer and now they're thriving and they get to stay at home with their kids. And I, as a listener, craved that. Like I wanted to hear all the success stories. And then I ended up buying her program because I was able to not only like read a testimonial on a sales page, but it's like those testimonials kind of come to life in a podcast episode. You're actually able to hear that person's voice. So those are just some ways. I'm also thinking like I have a client who she has a membership and she teaches how to create outdoor classrooms for like homeschool type of environments. And she has in her membership, like once a month, she invites her members on to share slideshow pictures of their outdoor classrooms. And it's like her people love it. And then she takes that audio and she plays it on her podcast, but they can't see the pictures because it's a podcast. So then she's like, if this sounds intriguing and like you want to see how all these people are setting up their classrooms, come join our membership. And it's super effective. And I think it's so smart. So there are so many different ways that you can both educate and like really give to your listeners, but still make sure that your show is benefiting your business.
Yeah. Those are really good ideas.
I know.
I'm literally thinking, I'm like, I don't think I've done like a lot of these things, and they would actually be really useful for us. Why haven't we done these, Melanie?
We had somebody on.
Malia on.
One person on.
Yeah, we did it
One time, like 70 episodes ago, we did
We did it one time.
I'm telling you, people don't do it enough. And people are very willing to come on and share their stories. And it's just such a great connection piece for listeners.
No, I agree. I've been listening to like a ton of like birth podcasts recently because like, I'm like mentally prepping myself. But there's this one where it's all like all these stories, and every single one of them, they're like, and I went through her course and it helped me with this. And the amount of times I've looked at the sales page for this course, I'm like, I don't need this. I need this. I don't need this.
Is it the labor nurse podcast?
No, it's the birth hour, I think is what it's called.
Oh, I think I listened to that one too.
Yeah.
Great. Now you have more to listen to.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, but it's like, you're right. It is like the story is so powerful sometimes. And I feel like that's definitely an element that a lot of podcasts in the business space miss. I think ours, including us, we like kind of miss it. Yeah, that storytelling element a lot, but it really is like a powerful aspect of marketing.
Yes.
So we need to chat about that.
And they're such fun episodes to record because it really is just a conversation. It's a conversation. And then I did just also want to mention, just in terms of like making sure that your podcast is benefiting your business, I really love to have your podcast, your email, and your social media really kind of work together as this powerhouse. I think we need to remember that people who are listening to your podcast might not also be reading every single email, and they might not be following you on social media. Like it could be 3 different audiences, but there is also that overlap. And so if you are launching something in your business, or if in your weekly newsletter this week, you're sharing a digital resource in your TPT store, you need to also be sharing those things in those other 2 places as well, because you just want those multiple touch points. And the more that people can hear about that same thing, it's going to be those reminders for people. When you're listening to a podcast, maybe you're in the carpool line and then you get home and you have to stop the episode and you forget to go back to it later that day, but you heard about something that you were really interested in. Well, if you're on the person's email list and they talk about that thing in their email, that's going to be that reminder to you. So you really just kind of like want all 3 of those platforms to be working together and supporting each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's hard sometimes, but I mean, I think that's like the good thing about podcasting, because it does like become that long form kind of content.
Yes.
That you can use to repurpose to like other platforms and things like that. So as far as like growing your show, what are are downloads still the best metric when focusing on growth? Are like reviews still important? Like where are we with how to measure if you're like doing okay? I'm doing air quotes.
Okay, so yeah, that a lot of different pieces there. So let's start with reviews.
Okay.
There's definitely a misconception about reviews. So, and when I'm talking about reviews, so not all of listening apps give you the ability to write a review. Apple Podcasts is the main one, right? And I always hear podcasters on their shows, they're like, leave me a review because that's how more people find our show. That's not true. Your reviews have nothing to do with the algorithm or like, if this person has 5,000 reviews, we're going to like bump them to the top. That's not a thing. I do think reviews are super important though. They're social proof. It's just like when we're shopping for something on Amazon. And I know I will read the reviews. That's the first thing I do when I'm shopping for something. Like I want to see photos of you in that dress. I want to like know if it's lasted. And people do the same thing with podcasts. If they come across a new podcast, or maybe they're looking for a podcast about parenting tips and they see like 100 parenting podcasts, what are you going to do? You're going to check out some of the reviews. You're going to check out some of the episode titles. But if you see that a show has really strong, positive social proof, you're going to be more likely to click on it. So reviews are important. Now, it can be really hard to get people to write a review. So it's not something that should be like your main focus or like the make or break of, is my show successful if I'm not getting a new review every week? Like, I wouldn't so much worry about that, but you do want them, but you have to ask for them. So that's kind of that. And then as far as downloads, so downloads, this could be a whole episode in itself. Downloads are important, of course. Like you want to see that people are listening to your show, but there's so many layers to downloads. I think when people think downloads, they think like they just look at kind of like their monthly downloads every month. And there's so much more that you can look at. If you've had your podcast for 4 years, you should be looking at across years, like, okay, how did I do this June versus last June versus the June before that? You can use your downloads to really see some trends. Like I work with a lot of people in the education space. And so summer is a really hot time for them because teachers are home and they have some more time. So their downloads tend to go up in the summertime. That's often the opposite with a parenting podcast. So, downloads give you great information and you want to see them growing for sure. But I would argue that there are more important things to look at. And I'll back up and say again, I touched on sponsors a little bit a few minutes ago, but if you are somebody who gets, or your goal is to get podcast sponsors, like official sponsors that are paying you, they're going to be paying you based on, well, not always. You can get podcast sponsors with a small audience, but your downloads play a role. So like if that's your goal, then yes, downloads might be more important for you than somebody whose goal is to get new one-on-one clients or grow their email list. So, but backing back up, I would argue that there are some other numbers that are really important to look at. Like you can log into your Apple Podcast account and you can see every single month how many new followers you got and how many followers you lost. So you can see what your retention rate is like. If you're seeing a bunch of new people coming in, but the same number of people leaving every month, that's really good information for you that like maybe you need to tweak your content a little bit. And that's really showing you how many new people you're bringing in versus with downloads. It's like, where are those downloads coming from? Are those new people? Are they my weekly listeners? So it can be a little bit vague. The other really important metric that I like to look at is consumption rate. So in Spotify and in Apple Podcasts, you can see your average consumption rate, which shows you about how long people are sticking around in your episode. So if you have a 15-minute episode and the majority of people are dropping off at minute 5, how can we like what's happening here? How can we really improve our content? Because if we can improve our content, that's ultimately what's going to like help grow your show long term.
Yeah. What is the metric for consumption? Is it like, did you say this? Did you say is it like 70%, or did I already have that in my mind?
In terms of like a goal,
Yeah, like what, you know me, I love a
I
number.
tell people to aim for 65% or higher.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you know, you can take length into consideration of that. Like if you have an average of, you know, 70%, people are listening for an average of 70% of a 20-minute episode, but maybe you have an hour-long episode that they're listening to 70% of or
Yeah.
50% of, like that's almost even better. I'm not very
Mhm.
good at math, but like hopefully you know what I'm saying. Like take
Yeah.
the episode length into consideration.
Yes.
The math
Yeah.
probably wasn't math in there.
No, that's a good point because we were going to ask, like, you know, well, what happens if like your downloads take a dip? But now that you're talking about these other metrics, like I'm
Mhm.
thinking maybe, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not the podcast manager here, but I'm thinking that if my downloads took a dip, maybe the first place I'd actually go to is like the consumption rate now. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should look there first because it's, if we're noticing that there are certain topics that people are just like really not interested in, or they're like
Mhm.
dropping off really quickly, or maybe like every time I talk, no one listens, but every time Melanie talks, they listen. And it's like, that's probably it. Maybe I should just see myself out.
No, but
That
it
might
is
be another place
interesting
to
because,
go.
like, you know, like episode titles are so important because that's really what people see before they decide, am I going to listen to this episode or not? And so maybe you have really high downloads on a specific episode, and maybe it's because the title was super compelling and
Hmm.
people were really interested, but then you look at your consumption rate and it's really low for that episode. So it's important to just like look at all of these things. I'll just add like a little tip that I was just talking to a client about this last month. This is something I just started tracking for her because I did it one month and she's like, "Oh, this is actually really helpful." She's had her podcast for several years, but what I did was I looked at the upcoming 2 months, and I looked back at her old episodes from the previous year. So like, you know, we're recording this at the end of May. So June and July of the previous year to see out of her old episodes, what were people listening to the most, to see like, okay, this is maybe the kind of topics that people are wanting to hear about this time of year because she speaks to educators. So their content is kind of seasonal
Mhm.
often. So then she can take that information for her planning for the upcoming months. So that's just something cool to look at as well. And then I think another kind of component to this growth conversation is your ROI of your show. Because podcast ROI, like I'm not going to lie, can be kind of hard to track. And there's two camps that people are in. Like a lot of people will start their podcast and in their mind, it's like this is a nurture tool
Mhm.
for my audience and that's how I'm going to view it. It's a place where I'm going to show up, I'm going to educate, I'm going to connect with people, and that's enough for me. But then other people are like, no, I want like hard data to prove that this is like worth my time. So a couple things that you can do is something so simple, and people do not do this, is to have some sort of like if you're a service provider or if you have a course or membership, these are the things where this is easy to do. But have some sort of intake form for when people book a call with you, when they book your services, when they join your membership, when they join your course, that asks them, do you listen to my podcast? I used to ask, did you hear about my services on my podcast? And now I ask, do you listen to my podcast? Because in my mind, if they are a listener of my podcast, that played some role in them trusting me enough to book my services or to join my course. So that simple question can do a lot. Same if you have a Facebook group and you share about your Facebook group on your podcast, have that as one of the entering questions. Do you listen to my podcast? And if not, here's a link, like come join us. But that's just that validation of like, oh, okay. there are people listening, and there are people listening who are also customers. So that's just like a simple thing that you can do. And then if you want to take it a step further, I mean, I have people who do UTM links,
Mhm.
some sort of tracking link, pretty links even. You can duplicate sales pages so that you're only using certain links. In Captivate, which is my podcast host, they actually have a feature where you can create tracking links in there that will be in your episode descriptions. So those are just kind of like two simple tips.
Yeah, I never thought about asking that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because I've like, and since we've been doing this podcast, I've only had like, I have the little referral thing in my inquiry that's like, oh, where did you hear about me?
Yeah.
And I've had like one person say podcast, but I'm like, likely they've probably heard about me from several places, right? They've probably like
Right.
been on my email list or on Instagram or whatever. So it's really just like whatever the last maybe moment that they heard about me.
Exactly.
So that is such a good question. And I love that because you're right. I think that so much of an email is kind of the same way a lot of times. Like
Yeah.
so much of what we do in email, people are like, I want to see it like it should be a money making machine. And I'm like, I mean, yeah. Theoretically, it would be a money making machine, right? But a lot of times it's not someone going like immediately buying something from an email. A lot of times it's them hearing from it over and over. They have the sales page pulled up on a tab, or they've been looking at the product and maybe they didn't hit buy right away. But that doesn't mean that your email didn't influence a purchase, right?
Exactly.
Didn't influence a booking. So I think it is like, I always say it's so hard to like draw a straight line between like I listened and I booked, or I read something and I booked, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't part of that process. So
exactly.
yeah.
Or discount codes. You can
Yes.
offer like just a specific one that you put on your podcast. That's really great for like if you have a short doors open period, to kind of create that urgency.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we mentioned this yet in the episode, but Melanie and I, to those who are listening, Melanie and I actually got our podcast started by working with Sara. I went through her group program. And I've like, there's so many things that like you've talked about today, and you have even more wisdom that I'm like learning stuff even on this episode. But there's so many things we've talked about, like the getting started and like knowing, like even between the cover art, between how we were going to do co-hosting and the systems and all of that, like you really helped us solidify in the beginning. And I genuinely don't think that we'd still be doing this like a year and a half in if we didn't have that like foundation. So highly recommend that if you're looking for someone, whether you are wanting to pass off your podcasting completely, I'm sure Sara would love to sign you.
Would love to.
Or if you're just looking for like a place to get started, I know you have a freebie, right? I think it's like a podcast launch guide.
I do. I have a free podcast launch guide. And what it is it's a 5-episode private podcast series that also has a workbook that goes along with it. So you can use both, you can use one or the other. But what it will do is it will really help you identify and really create your podcast brand, which is kind of what we were talking about in the beginning with like your structure of your episodes and all of those details that you need to get ironed out in the beginning. And then it will also walk you through the different platforms that you're going to need to submit your show to. So some of those logistics as well. So that is at podcastingforeducators.com/launch guide.
Yeah, I know it was so helpful for us when we were going through the group program to have like feedback on a lot of that stuff. I feel like we spent too much time arguing about it in the beginning. We were like, we should do this. No, we should do this. No, this. So it was nice to get that feedback. And I know you're deciding what to do with the group program, but there are other ways that people can also get support with starting their podcast, right? I think you have like a course.
Yeah, so I have an online course that right now is always open. I don't know if that'll change in the future or not, but it will really like walk you through step by step on a 6-week timeline of how to launch your show, but it will also give you what you need to manage and grow your show long term. And it's called the Podcasting for Educators Prep School. So I have that, and then I also do offer one-on-one services. So podcast production, like your editing and show notes and scheduling and all of that.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, highly recommend working with Sara. She's like been such a great resource and genuinely helped save Melanie and I a lot of nights where we debated podcasting elements for way too long. trying to decide how the heck we were going to run this thing. So
Well, thank you so much. And it was so much fun working with you guys and getting it off the ground. I love co-hosted shows. So it was a really fun project to work on.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super duper appreciate you sharing. Like I said, I like literally was taking a couple of notes as you were writing. So I'm like, I'm going to need to remember this later. So I know
We'll have to have a follow-up because we didn't talk too much about like actual growth of your show. So I'll be back for part 2 maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good to me. Let's book it.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for joining our conversation today. If you enjoyed this episode, please head to your listening app and leave a quick rating and review.
If you're on Instagram, share this episode and tag us at Duxbury Digital and at The Relevant Collective. We'd love to hear from you. We'll meet you back here next Tuesday for more practical strategies to take your business from chaos to conversions.